Hello YouTube, my name's Marie. Today we are going to do a video unlike any other video I have posted to YouTube, and that is more of a commentary on a current K-drama land related scandal or controversy. So there's this K-drama entitled The Joseon Exorcist, and it is a release that I have been looking forward to. So initially I was going to post a video of doing an episodic reaction, something that I don't do, and I was really excited to try, and I did have fun doing it, so maybe I'll do it again with a different show. I knew while I was watching that first episode and reacting to it that it was already cancelled. So throughout the whole reaction I'm like, oh, I love this so much, like why did it get cancelled? Like really having a little bit of a pity party because it was such a good first episode that really captured my attention that I was sad that it had ended. From that reaction, I edited it, I even uploaded it, getting it all ready to be posted for tomorrow's video, Sunday's video, and then I decided to do a little bit more research onto why exactly this show, Joseon Exorcist, had been cancelled. And so I've already read these articles, but I want to take you through them so that you also know where the broadcasting station like SBS is coming from. So I'm looking at republicworld.com, and the first thing that we see is that it's been cancelled after only 2 episodes, and it's been cancelled indefinitely. I know a lot of people were hoping that the show would just take a break to fix the problems that we will discuss and then come back like they're doing with Where the River Moon Rises or something like that. I can never remember that title. So the issue just continued to snowball and snowball that they had to cancel it indefinitely. So only 2 episodes of the show have been released, and in those 2 episodes we're introduced to several main characters, being King Taejon, his 2 sons, and these are real historical figures, and that is, as you'll see, is one of the main issues. And so the story revolves around the family, like the royal family, the real royal family's fantasy-driven mission to save Joseon Dynasty against evil spirits. So that is the premise of the show. And now we're getting into the second issue why it's been cancelled. So remember, the first one is that they're using real historical figures in a fantastical made-up setting. So that's one thing, and that'll come back and get even worse. And then the second thing is that viewers noticed that there was like many historical distortions that were happening, including the food, which is heavily inspired by Chinese culture, which quote unquote didn't sit well with many viewers, considering the ongoing disagreement between South Korea and China. This is again very important. So specifically they showed mooncakes and 1,000-year-old eggs, and these really stand out, you know, like if you've watched a lot of historical K-dramas before, I noticed the eggs right away. I was like, that's not food I've ever really seen highlighted in a historical K-drama before, and that's because, you know, it's not Korean food, it's Chinese. So here it mentions the ongoing controversy between Chinese TV personalities claiming that things like kimchi, some aspects of Korean musical storytelling, even the traditional hanbok, all originated from China. This, to me, when I heard of this, I was like, one, not really surprised, because if you know much about China, you know that they like to try and absorb anything that they think is profitable. If they see something that is making money, they want to claim it as something originated with them, that it's theirs. So for one thing, I wasn't surprised, but I did have the question in my mind of like how pervasive this thought actually is. And I'll tell you a little story that maybe 2 weeks ago, if you're taking any Zoom uni classes, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, but in my Korean language class, we were split into breakout rooms so that we could have a chance to, you know, practice one-on-one with another student. And we went through all the exercises and we had some time left. The student that I was with in the breakout room, I knew she was living somewhere in China. I didn't know exactly where, but I knew that that's where she was located at the moment. So I just asked her, I was like, so do you feel like with your like Mandarin or Cantonese background, is learning Korean easier for you than it was to learn English or something. And she's like, yeah, definitely, I do feel like my previous languages are helping me here. And then she went on to say, because you know, like, Korean language basically comes from Chinese. In previous Korean dynasties, they wrote everything down in, you know, classical Chinese, but the language that they spoke was still very much Korean. So I knew already that she's not very well informed, but she continued and went on to say that, you know, even Korean fashion is from China, and a lot of Korean culture is actually Chinese. At that point, I was just shocked. So this girl is 19 years old, and she believes some of these sentiments that are being portrayed by these Chinese personalities that this web article is referring to. So this is an issue. But you know, I laugh about it because my instinct is to like giggle at most things, but this is a big issue. Like, this is an entire nation's culture and identity that's a whole other nation is trying to take credit for and absorb, and it is, you know, serious. Like, okay, so that's the end of this article, and then I went back and then I read an article by the South China Morning Post, because in that first article it had cited this one, so I wanted to read this one too, but honestly it's a lot of the same. This article also points out that the show began to lose most of its sponsors. Okay, so now we're gonna go over to YouTube and look at the comment sections for one video already on this topic. The first one, which I thought was really telling, was historical inaccuracies, mate. There are no zombies in the history of mankind. This is missing the point. This is missing the point. Nobody is upset about the zombies. Nobody. People are upset about the fact that they are using real life historical figures, kings and princes of Joseon, and misrepresenting their characters through this show. This is a bit confusing for me and then also other Western viewers, because if you're like me, I think we've been trained, honestly, to assume that everything that we see that's like, you know, from Hollywood or Canada made, I'm from Canada, is inaccurate. I mean, how many of us watch a show that's based on historical events, and as soon as it finishes we grab our phone and we Google how accurate is blah 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 movie? Ingrained in us and like taught to us that TVs and movies are not real history. But if you're watching this channel, I'm sure you've seen on like the opening to almost every K-drama, they've got a disclaimer that says what you're about to see is not historically accurate. Any resemblance to historical figures is unintentional. Like, that is plastered in front of every show, I feel like, even the ones that are taking place in modern day. So already I think Korean media takes it a little bit more seriously about how a viewer can interpret and internalize what they're seeing as real history, whereas like our media are being like, you know, North American, like American and Canadian media, that onus is all on you. They're like, well, this is just the thing that we made, you can interpret it however you want, and if you want to do more research, that's up to you. I think there is a cultural split here, because later we'll see a few comments that say like, if a historical figure from your history was being misrepresented, how would you feel? And this isn't really an argument that I feel will really pull at our heartstrings at all, because we're used to seeing our historical figures misrepresented, or the names of historical figures used to like draw in viewers. Like, I mean, how many people watched Rain from like the CW, which is like the worst historic, like it is not historically accurate whatsoever. Or say Abraham Lincoln Vampire Slayer or whatever. Like, we're very used to seeing our historical figures represented and reinterpreted or like reimagined in a different way. So I don't think that is the greatest argument to try and use against us in a way to show how the Korean people are feeling, but I get where they're coming from, because I don't think that's common in Korea. Like, any historical K-drama that we watch that is fantasy based uses brand new characters. Like, they just make up a king and the prince, and like they make up characters so that they have no historical ties to another real life character. So there, I hope you are understanding what I'm saying, that there is a cultural difference between our media, where in Korea that it's not common to see historical figures misrepresented or reimagined in this way, whereas we are used to that. So when we hear, oh, this K-drama was cancelled because of historical inaccuracies, we're like, that's weird. Why? Like, get over it almost, which I don't think is the correct response. Going back to the comments. And then we see this person say, this drama is not a Korean drama. And I found this really interesting. You know, it's full of a Korean cast. It was filmed in Korea, at least I believe. And if you keep digging in the comments, people will say that, like, the writer is Chinese. Googled the writer and it seemed to have a Korean name to me, so I was confused. But then if you look at the writer's company, the company is based in China. So that is where that whole narrative is coming from, where this K-drama is not Korean. It's because the writer is employed by a Chinese company. Yeah, right here it says, this drama is sponsored by China. And then again, they're pointing out the Chinese props were present in the scenes. This comment says, I support this move. China should stop messing around with their so-called silent war. I think this is a good way to phrase that, silent war. I don't know if this is a term that's like being used a lot in Korea, because when I'm looking through these comments, I'm getting a very filtered perspective by Koreans, you know, write English well enough and feel comfortable writing English well enough to post something like this. So it's a very small minority of like perspectives that we're seeing. But if anybody knows, I would really like to know more about this like silent war. And then we have underneath that, it says, all international fans of K-dramas, please don't be sad. There are many interesting Korean dramas that will come out in the future. I want you to like them. Which, you know, is a very nice, I think that's quite nice. And it's very true. There's like a plethora of K-dramas that you can watch besides this one. This person says, just change the characters and not based on historical representation. Again, I think this person is hitting the nail right on the head. That is one of the main issues. The writer is based out of a Chinese company, and he has chosen to write characters that are historical figures, which is already not the norm within K-drama land. Chooses to write them in such a way that is offensive to the original people, because the king slaughters an entire crowd of his own citizens in the very first scene of the first episode. Did he kill the whole crowd? Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I think I will end on this comment here, which says, this is outrageous for the viewers, especially us foreigners, but we are not Korean and we do not know what parts are offensive for them. Oh, maybe I won't end on this one, because then it says, but canceling is not the solution. Perhaps a change in the use of historical figures with completely fictional ones would be the answer. I think the show is past that. Like, I think it's suffering from really bad timing, but I do really like how this comment says, but we are not Korean and we do not know which parts were offensive. We have to keep that in mind. I think the K-drama fan base and then also the K-pop foreign fan base really needs to check themselves sometimes. We need to be reminded that this media is not made for us. Media is made by Koreans for Koreans. Although I think in the future we're gonna gain a little bit more power, because entertainment is such a huge industry now that powers tourism. At the moment, the home fan base is the most important, which it should be, I think. So if they have a petition signed by over 100,000 people calling for the cancellation of this show, we as the foreign fan base, I think, need to be receptive to that, understanding to that, and, you know, accept it. Like, there's nothing else we can do. Like, the most we can hope for is maybe this show gets picked up by Netflix. And I hope people take this opportunity to like educate themselves maybe about conflict between Korea and China, because I won't go any more into it because I don't think I can explain it as well as, say, a YouTuber living in Korea. I will end with this. This show got cancelled because viewers found it inauthentic. China trying to meddle, yeah. I think that's all I can say on this topic. I kind of wanted to just sit down and ramble about this because I did have thoughts on it, because when I was doing some research yesterday, I found a lot of the comments by English speakers to be pretty like condescending and not very well informed. Like, as much as I personally may not agree with the blanket cancellation of this show, I think it could have been salvaged, especially for how beautifully it's shot and, you know, the actors involved. I wanted to watch it. As much as that's my own personal opinion, we shouldn't be trying to, I don't know, like this comment here. Like, we wanted to watch it for the horror genre. It's a story about zombie apocalypse. For God's sakes. We obviously know it's not based on a true story. Their industry really seems to suppress creative and freedoms of their artists. Like, I think this is just such a misinformed interpretation of what's actually happening. Like, they're not trying to suppress creative freedoms, at least in my opinion. They're trying to keep propaganda out of their entertainment, which propaganda is such a intense word, but when you have an outside investor trying to push more of their culture in and absorb another's culture, like, I think people really need to understand how important that concept is here. Okay, so my battery actually just died on me, so that's an indication I've been talking for way too long, and I have never done a video like this, so hopefully I can edit it together so I'm not just a big rambly mess like I have been for the past half an hour. And yeah, let me know your guys' thoughts on this situation down below. Have I been able to change your opinion if you were initially very angry cancellation of this show? Because it's a really complex situation we as foreign viewers don't really have a say in, and we shouldn't have a say in it. Actually, I'm not quite done, because I have one more point, because I'm conflicted about it. Because where is the line? Because the on-screen talent is all Korean, and I believe the director is Korean, and I'm assuming the vast majority of people that did work on this project were Korean. Where's the line? Like, how much outside influences do you allow when the vast majority, say 99% Korean? Like, yes, you want to shut down China trying to come in, swoop in, claim cultural elements as their own. Yes, that is bad. We should not allow that. But do you derail an entire production with 99% Korean talent to stop that? Or, like other commenters said, do you just, going forward, change the names of characters and blur out those props that are not historically and culturally accurate? You know, I feel like this is quite a big loss. I don't have an answer to that because, again, I'm not who this show is made for. I'm not Korean. So I know I have quite a few Korean viewers. I would really like your guys' opinion on that. Like, how much do you allow? Or is everything just a blanket no? Like, is everything just no, not allowed? Or is there wiggle room here? So that is everything from me. I hope you guys have a good day and a good night. Bye.